What's good, everybody? It's your boy, O'Shea Duke Jackson, back at it again with another episode of the Celebrity Jump. I really want to talk about this whole idea about, black women who are taken advantage of when they're underage. And obviously, we've just seen what happened with R. Kelly. And I was talking to a really good friend of mine that I met here on YouTube, the Afropolitan Podcast. She's a wonderful person based out of the UK, city of London. And she was talking to me about, there's a lack of protection for black women coming up in like South London and in North London and Edmonton, where, you have many of these young Caribbean and African ethnic women that are coming up in these neighborhoods. And a lot of older guys are trying to talk to them, 30, 40, and these girls are like 15 and 16, and it's happening, and everybody kind of sweeps it under the rug. And when we say things like that, we would, we're honest enough to understand that in the black communities, it happens, right? We know that this is something that occurs. But let me talk about this. When it happens with young black men, it also is swept underneath the rug. Okay. And I want to talk about this because Dillinger, who is, famous rapper, producer, formerly with Death Row, he recently was on the podcast. Okay. And he claims that many years ago, Jada Pinkett was in a relationship. Okay. Listen to this, with Chris Kelly. Now, if any of you guys remember Chris Kelly, he was part of the famous hip hop group Crisscross. If you guys remember the song Jump, Jump. And that was like when I was like 11, 10, early 90s. Both of them were from, I believe, Atlanta. And according to Chris, Jada and Chris had some sort of entanglement about 1993. That would have made Chris Kelly around 14, Jada Pinkett around 22. Now, we can also remember that Jada Pinkett has had many issues in her life, some being drugs. Okay, this is also the story of Chris Kelly. He was using drugs as a teen. A lot of times that fame can catch up with somebody and it could take you in. But he also died of a drug overdose in 2013. All right. But see, what we don't know is that if this is true, if this young man was exposed to sexual contacts too soon, it could have broke his heart. And I want to reference George Macon because, a lot of times when we talk about these young men, especially to start making money at a young age, young athletes, younger women will give some guys a pass depending on how they look. We all kind of know it happens. There's situations where guys end up sleeping with teachers in the black community. It happens with older women in your churches. And if, sometimes some women think that the guys are attractive, it can go down. And this is why so many black mothers are so protective of their young men, because women can pick up on things that we can't. And if you women are listening to my podcast, you know what I'm talking about. Women understand that if a young man is 15 or 16 and he's, developing, that women will look past the fact that he's only 15 or 16. Some women will look at him and say, well, you ain't just a little boy, you're too young for me. Some women will do the same things that men will do. And black women in the black communities are aware of that. Okay. They understand how these women are looking at these guys. They have that intuition that we might not. And a lot of times we congratulate, let's say, a young guy that's 16 and he sleeps with a 32-year-old or a 20-year-old. We look at that as an accomplishment, but you don't understand how mentally messed up he can be. And why do I say that? How many of these guys are ready for that type of sexual experience? Because are you really ready at a 16-year-old young man to be, let's say, for a woman that's 25, 26, she's really sexually experienced, and you really like that about her? Are you really able to handle that? And not only that, what about the mind games that can come along with it? Okay? Because let me just tell you something. It's hard for a lot of guys who are old to deal with some of the mind games. Let you be a young man dealing with these mind games. You see, that's what people don't want to talk about. You know, you don't want to talk about that. These young guys cannot, listen to what I'm saying, they cannot take it. And then when they start having sex that young, some of them may not have a lot of respect for women because they don't understand the purpose of women. And if you start giving them sex too young, and especially if it's really good, like porn stars type of sex, as a guy that's 14 or 15 or 16, how is he ever going to be able to bond with a woman who's not necessarily liked at his age? And then that's kind of how a lot of times guys can start turning out chicks because they've been exposed. Then they start doing the same thing with those young chicks that's around their age. And it's something that happens that folks don't talk about. A lot of young black men are taken advantage of by older women, more so than we know. I'm not saying a lot of times, but it happens. And nobody talks about it. It's swept underneath the rug. Same thing that happened with, I think is a Davy Boy, or the brother that was I believe with Death Row. Okay, Danny Boy, actually. What did he say? He said that he was easily having sex with Mary J. Blige as a 15, 16-year-old. She was well into her 20s. And Suge Knight would take him up to the room and she wouldn't have no problem. It was her little boy toy. It was totally fine. She thought he was good looking. Okay. And she was doing what she wanted. According, I don't know how true it is, but that's what's being said. And we all know that Jada Pinkett, well, she liked August Alsina. He was much younger than her. But it's only important if it's R. Kelly. It's only important if it's men that do it. What about some of the women that do this, that take advantage of young black men every day? Young athletes. Okay? Young men that are in church. All right? A lot of young men out there are being at the behest of women, being sexually exploited. But the thing about it is because it's cool, right? If a young man is being sexed up by an older woman, that's like the greatest thing in the world. Then when you start playing those mental games on them, then it's not cool anymore. Then they got those problems, And that's the situation that folks don't want to talk about. Okay? We're not talking about that. And young black men, and I'm not saying that women are not important. Women are important. Okay? But what's happening to young black men is important. Okay? What's happening with young black men is important. Okay? That's the same thing. And their lives are just as important as anybody else's. They deserve to be respected as anybody else. So guys, what do you think? It's your boy, O'Shea Duke Jackson, back at it again with another episode of The Celebrity Junk. I really appreciate you for all that you do. Subscribe to the bell. Check out the first comment at the top. And as you know, the buffoonery remains at an all-time high.